The Giant's Challenge. The afternoon sun blazed over Hong Kong as Bruce Lee adjusted the sash of his kimono, defined muscles glistening beneath a fine sheen of sweat. In the training yard of the Jun Fan Academy, he repeated precise movements, lightning-fast kicks, punches that cut through the air with a sharp hiss. With each blow, his breathing remained controlled, almost imperceptible. It was then that the shadow of a huge man stretched across the mat. "You?" The deep and mocking voice echoed through the space. "Is this the famous Bruce Lee? It looks like a toothpick trying to balance itself." Bruce looked up. In front of him was Ivan the Bear Petrov, a professional wrestler known for crushing opponents with his weight of over 300 pounds. Petrov crossed his arms, his chest broad as a barrel, his lips twisted in a sneer. "They say you're fast, but speed doesn't beat strength. You're too weak to last a round with me." Some academy students approached, tense. They knew Bruce didn't turn down challenges, but Petrov was no ordinary opponent. He was a mountain of muscles and arrogance. Bruce didn't respond right away. He just wiped the sweat from his forehead with the back of his hand, his dark eyes fixed on the giant. Then, calmly, he said, "Let's see." Petrov laughed, a deep sound that shook his immense body. Without warning, he charged like a bull, fists raised for a devastating blow. Bruce barely moved, just a slight shift to the side, as if the attack was too slow to merit more than a minor adjustment. The first move was a finger jab, a quick jab with outstretched fingers straight into Petrov's eyes. The giant backed away, blinking furiously, his vision blurred for an instant. Before he could recover, Bruce spun his body into a perfect roundhouse kick, his foot hitting the side of the fighter's knee with a sharp crack. Petrov staggered, his face contorted in pain. "What was that?" he growled, trying to steady himself. Bruce didn't give him time to react. In one fluid movement, he approached and applied a trap and strike, holding Petrov's arm with one hand while the other delivered a precise punch to the solar plexus. The air escaped the giant's lungs in a choked grunt. He tried to grab Bruce, but his fingers found only emptiness as the Jeet Kune Do master was already out of reach. 3 movements. Less than 5 seconds. Petrov fell to his knees, panting, his hands on the mat. The silence in the gym was absolute. The students looked on in disbelief. The man who had laughed at Bruce was now barely breathing. Bruce approached, his voice calm. "Strength is useful, but it is not everything. The true art of fighting lies in efficiency, not size." Petrov looked up, his pride hurt, but something in his gaze had changed. It was no longer mockery, it was respect. I underestimated you," he admitted, hoarsely. Bruce offered his hand. Petrov hesitated, but accepted, allowing himself to be pulled to his feet. The giant was still immense, but now there was something different about his posture. "Train with me," Bruce said. "Learn what it means to be fast, not just strong." Petrov nodded, arrogance replaced by genuine curiosity. And so, under the Hong Kong sky, a new chapter began, not with a victor and a loser, but with 2 men who discovered that true strength lay beyond muscle. The weight of trust. The following days were relentlessly routine. Petrov arrived at the training yard before dawn, his heavy footsteps echoing between the stone walls of the temple. Bruce was already there, moving silently through the shadows, as if the air around him was bending to his will. The Russian giant watched, fascinated, as the master demonstrated how a precisely delivered blow could take down an opponent twice his size, without brute force, just angle, timing, and an understanding of the human body. "You're not fighting a man," Bruce said, adjusting Petrov's posture. "You're fighting against gravity, against fear, against your own inertia." Petrov grunted, frustrated. His muscles, accustomed to crushing, now trembled with the demand for finesse. Once, when attempting a quick block, his arm tangled with Bruce's, and the master took him down with a fluid movement, as if Petrov were made of straw. "Pizdits," he growled, rubbing his shoulder. Bruce didn't laugh. He just reached out his hand again. Again. And so it was. Weeks passed, and what was once a battle of egos turned into something deeper, a wordless dialogue. Petrov learned to listen to the rhythm of an opponent's breathing, to anticipate movements not by size, but by the tension in his shoulders, the weight in his heels. Bruce, in turn, discovered in the Russian an iron discipline, an ability to absorb pain that few possessed. Together, they became a machine of efficiency, a giant who no longer needed to crush, and a master who no longer needed to prove anything. But peace never lasts. The shadow of once. It was on a humid night, when the temple lanterns flickered in the light rain, that the past returned. Bruce was meditating in the main hall, hands resting on his knees, when he heard the door creak. He didn't need to open his eyes to know it wasn't Petrov. "You always knew how to hide, didn't you, Sifu?" The voice was cold, filled with ancient poison. Bruce opened his eyes slowly. Before him, standing under the entrance arch, was a man with a face marked by scars, one of them cutting through his left eyebrow, as a permanent reminder. Victor Run, his former student. Or rather, the student he didn't choose to train. "Victor," said Bruce, standing up calmly. "Some time ago. Too long." Victor took a step forward, his gloved hands flexing. "You left me behind. He said I had no discipline. That I was dangerous." Bruce didn't look away. "I told you weren't ready. And you proved me right." A crooked smile spread across Victor's face. "Ah, but I'm ready now." And brought gifts. Behind him, shadows moved. Armed men, faces covered by masks, entered the hall with the precision of soldiers. Petrov appeared at the opposite door, his face bloodied, his fists clenched. "They came from the east side," he said, his voice hoarse. "I couldn't hold them all." Bruce didn't look back. His eyes remained fixed on Victor. "What do you want?" "Justice," as Victor spat the word. "You denied me what was rightfully mine. Now, I'll take what's yours." One of the masked men stepped forward, a curved blade gleaming in the dim light. Bruce moved before the blow was delivered, dodging it with a turn of his body and responding with a kick that hit the attacker in the chest, sending him against the wall. Petrov, despite the blood running down his temple, lunged at another, knocking him down with a punch that shook the ground. But there were many. Victor laughed, pulling out a pistol. "You were always good with your hands, Sifu. But what about with a bullet in the knee?" Bruce didn't hesitate. In a move that Petrov could barely follow, he grabbed one of the training poles leaning against the wall and threw it hard. The gun hit Victor's hand, sending the pistol flying away. The former student howled in pain, clutching his broken fingers. "You never understood," Bruce said, moving forward. "True discipline is not about what you can destroy. It's about what you choose not to destroy." Victor backed away, his eyes burning with hatred. "Then die like a hypocrite." He made a sign. The masked men advanced in unison, blades and clubs raised. Bruce took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment. It was no longer a master teaching a student. He was a man fighting for his life. And then, Petrov was at his side. "Davai," the Russian growled, his knuckles cracking. "Let's show them what efficiency is." The price of victory. The fight was brutal. Bruce and Petrov moved as one mind, the former fluid, unpredictable, using the environment to his advantage, the second, a force of nature, felling enemies with blows that echoed like thunder. But Victor's men were trained, and the blades cut through the air with deadly precision. One of the attackers managed to hit Bruce on the flank, opening a deep cut. Another knocked Petrov down with a blow to the back of the head, sending the giant staggering. Victor, watching from afar, smiled. "Pathetic. The two of you together, and yet." He didn't finish the sentence. Petrov, with a roar, grabbed one of the men and threw him at Victor, knocking them both to the ground. Bruce took advantage of the distraction to disarm another attacker and, with one quick movement, broke his arm. The pain made the man scream, and the others hesitated. "Enough," Bruce said, his voice cutting through the chaos. "You won't win." Victor stood up, his face contorted with rage. "You were always arrogant. And you were always weak," Bruce replied. "Weak of spirit. Weak of character. That's why I didn't train him." Victor took out a knife hidden in his boot. "Then die knowing this." He advanced, blade shining. Bruce prepared himself, but before the blow was delivered, a metallic sound echoed. Victor stopped, looking down. An arrow was stuck in his shoulder, blood running down his shirt. Outside, voices shouted in Mandarin. Temple reinforcements had arrived. Victor staggered, eyes wide with disbelief. "This isn't over." Bruce took a step forward. "It's over for you." With one swift movement, he disarmed Victor and pinned him to the ground, his knee pressing into his back. "Take him," he ordered the guards who entered. "And take care of the wounded." As Victor's men were dragged away, Petrov approached, his face bruised but his eyes shining. "You could have killed him," said the Russian. Bruce looked at his hands, stained with blood. "It could. But that's not how you win a war." Petrov nodded, as if he understood something that could not be said in words. The legacy. The days that followed were of recovery. The temple was repaired, the injured were treated, and Victor Wren was taken to the authorities. Bruce knew this wasn't the end, just one battle in a larger war, one he couldn't avoid forever. But for now, there was peace. Petrov, now with a new scar on his eyebrow, trained harder than ever. He was no longer the arrogant giant who had arrived in Hong Kong. He was a dedicated student, a loyal partner. And at some point, without either of them realizing it, he became something more, a friend. One evening, as they watched the sun set over the city's rooftops, Petrov broke the silence. "I'm leaving tomorrow." Bruce wasn't surprised. "Where to?" "Russia. I have things to sort out." Petrov hesitated. "But I'll be back." Bruce smiled. "I know." The Russian held out his hand. Bruce squeezed her, firmly. "Thank you," said Petrov. "For showing me that strength isn't just what you carry in your arms." Bruce nodded. "And thanks for reminding me that sometimes a little extra weight doesn't hurt." Petrov laughed, a deep, genuine sound. And so, under the darkening sky, two men went their separate ways, but each carrying a piece of the other's journey. True strength, after all, was not in winning alone. It was about knowing when to reach out.